Welcome to the Best Business Podcast, the podcast for established marketers, entrepreneurs, and CEOs, the ones who want to join me in my mission to create 200 new multimillionaires who solve world problems with entrepreneurship. If that's you, then this podcast was created to give you access to the tools, training, strategies, and tactics you need to achieve multiple seven-figure profits as soon as possible. This world needs the best business you can build, so please get ready, open your mind, believe you can do this, and let's build a better world together for future generations. Hello everyone, thank you for joining us. My name is Daryl Urbanski, your host as always, and today we have a very special guest and friend, a buddy of mine, Liam Martin. Liam is co-founder and CMO of Staff.com and TimeDoctor.com, a time analytics application that can tell you how efficiently you and your team are working. I first met Liam when we were both speaking at a South by Southwest conference in Vegas. A mutual friend and past guest on our show, Stephanie Burns, introduced us since we were both Canadians doing business in America. It took less than 5 seconds to pick up on how sharp Liam was. I knew I liked him right away, and I enjoyed our conversations, plus running into him over and over and over again at different conferences and places as time went on. A few months back, I went to visit him in Ottawa, and he gave me a tour of his office and a tour of the software as a service community growing in Ottawa. Many companies you may know of, including Shopify, are turning Ottawa into the main tech hub of Canada. I've known Liam for a few years now and watched his business grow. He's always on the cutting edge and working on next generation type stuff. From spending $250,000 on hiring staff to extensive R&D into the latest AI developments to even where in the world you can find the best developers for your software company, Liam is always full of surprises and a guy who is really in the trenches doing the work, not just talking about it. So I've asked him to join us here today to share with his story, plus what he can about growing a software company, hiring, training, and managing staff for clear accountability and increased revenues. Liam, thank you so much for joining us, my friend. I appreciate your time. I know there's a lot of other things you could be doing. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, Daryl. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. We were just catching up before I hit record. So Liam part-time lives in the Philippines, and that's where I am right now. So we're just kind of talking about the beloved ant-sized ants and some other nuances to the country. But Liam, I've known your story for the last few years, and we spent time together, but I actually don't even know how you first got started. Like, do you come from an entrepreneurial family? Did you have a business as a kid? Like, where did you get the bug to own your own business from?
So I think that comes primarily from my father. I don't know whether or not the rest of your listeners would know about this, but you probably do since you're Canadian. Do you know the Beaver Tails franchise?
Yeah, I love Beaver Tails.
Beaver Tails. So my father, he was definitely an entrepreneurial person at heart, and he had started a company that was selling deep fried bananas. So you'd take a banana, you'd put it in some batter, and then you'd fry it, and you'd sell it on the street. So he bought a deep fryer, he brought all this equipment, and he set up his little business. And things were going okay, but they weren't going great. And he was in it for about 6 months, and then this guy approached him saying, hey, you know what? I have this great idea. I'd like to build a company that sells these like fried pastries that my grandmother invented, and they're called Beaver Tails. I would like to be able to continue on with this. Like, I'd like to be able to build it, but I don't have access to all of the equipment. And to buy all the equipment, it would cost me $10,000 or $20,000, whatever the number was. So why don't I just partner with you? We'll be 50-50 partners. You provide the equipment, and I provide the recipe and the labor, the workforce, the sweat equity, and together we'll be 50-50 partners and build the business. And my father said no. He said, no, I'm going to sell it to you. He sold the equipment to the Beaver Tails guy, and now I think Beaver Tails has like 350 different locations across the planet. It's a very successful, easily 9-figure brand. So that was an interesting sort of early entrepreneurial background for me, connected to my father. But I really got into entrepreneurship probably throughout high school and university. I actually had a sporting goods company throughout university that was selling sporting goods for ice skaters. And that went quite well. I actually ended up selling it to go to grad school. And I think the primary reason why I sold it was because most of my family said I should go the academic route as opposed to the business route. Recognized throughout grad school that that's not what I wanted to do. So I actually dropped out of grad school and got back into entrepreneurship almost instantly after that. I was teaching at McGill University, and as a sessional, which is like most top end universities, the graduate students teach the first year classes because they don't want the professors to waste their time on first year classes. So I was teaching this class and I was making $2,600 per semester. And I think it worked out to about $4 an hour. It was absolutely horrible work. And I also recognized that I wasn't very good at it because we started with 350 students and ended up with, I think by the end of the year, I think I had 200 left. So 150 students had quit the course throughout the semester. So I approached my supervisor at the time, and the course had just finished, and I came in and I said, I don't think I'm very good at this. And he said, no, you're not very good at this. And I said, well, what do you think I should do? And he said, well, your whole point, you want to teach, right? Like you want to become a professor. You're going to have to teach classes all the time if you want to be a professor, because it's kind of a package deal. And if you don't like doing that, then you should reevaluate that. So I basically said, okay, like, what should I do? And he said, well, we can give you a master's. Can you write 200 pages on anything? And I said, sure. And about 3 weeks later, I wrote 200 pages, one of the worst master's dissertations probably of all time, threw it under his desk, and got an A- and was off to the races, and now was out. And that also happened to be right when the economy absolutely collapsed, which was 2008. So that was a horrible situation. But I actually ended up, right off of that job, starting an online tutoring company, because I really did not like being a lecturer, but I really liked teaching people. So I recognized that I could just be a lot more efficient if I started doing it online. So I did it just the way that we're doing it right now. I did it on Skype. And I was able to tutor about a dozen students, and I was being paid, I believe it was like $60 an hour to be able to tutor these students, and it became a full-time job. Then I hired my friend, and then I hired a couple more friends and their friends, and over 2.5 years, it ended up being about 200 tutors throughout North America and Europe. Ended up selling that company, and off of that went into consulting and started consulting on managing remote teams. And one of the major reasons why I sold the company at 200 tutors was because I had a particular pain point. And the pain point was I had these tutors that would be working with a client for 10 hours, and then the student would come to me, and I billed the student for 10 hours, and the student would come to me and say, I didn't work 10 hours with my tutor, I only worked 5 hours. So then I would go to the tutor and I would say, did you work 10 hours with this kid? And they'd say, of course I did. Of course I worked 10 hours with this kid. So what I end up having to do is I would refund the student for 5 hours, and I would pay the tutor for the full 5 hours. And I would end up losing money on the deal. And that was destroying the business. So I needed a way to be able to very clearly quantify exactly how much time was being spent on work throughout my remote team of 200 tutors.
Right.
So off of that, basically, me and my co-founder, Rob, we founded a company called Time Doctor. So Time Doctor is basically a tool to be able to measure how much, number one, how much work you're doing throughout your workday, but secondarily, how productive you are throughout your workday. And that basically is still one that we're running right now, along with staff.com. And things are going great. That's basically me up until now in terms of entrepreneurship.
Which is awesome. And I love Time Doctor. I just recently switched, and it's funny, that's part of what led to this interview was I had a pain point. I've been working with remote teams forever, and I was working with, I guess, a competitor, Upwork, because just there used to be Odesk. It was, at the time, it was a marketplace and a time tracker, and I just loved it because, like you mentioned, I had a pain point where I'd be, hey, I'm paying you per hour, and they would, they bill me for 80 hours. hours, and I'd be like, I just paid you for 80 hours, but I feel like I only got 5-10 hours of results. Like there's such a huge gap. So that's what drew me to them originally. And anyways, wanted to get off that platform, and we found Time Doctor, and anyway, so we jumped in, and I loved it right away. I referred 3 friends, and then you and I were talking, already to set up the interview, and then Nora got your bio and was like, hey, did you know Liam owns Time Doctor? I'm like, no, he doesn't. He owns staff.com. And she was like, look at his bio. And so it was hilarious. I love it. If anyone here is listening and works with remote teams, I've been using it for about 2 weeks, and I'm referring people left, right, and center because I love the clarity, especially being able to integrate. I mean, this interview isn't necessarily to pitch Time Doctor, but if anyone here is working with remote teams and can empathize with the pain point that Liam and I are talking about right here, Time Doctor really is designed to help eliminate that, and it does it beautifully. It's very simple. It's very elegant. Has a mobile app that tracks hours on your phone as well. I love it. So that's awesome. How did you get involved with staff.com? Where does that come into the picture?
Well, so when we started building Time Doctor, I actually had we were getting a lot of interest in Time Doctor, primarily because a lot of the competitors that you had mentioned, or you had mentioned one of them, and we wouldn't consider them a competitor, to be honest with you, at that point. What we basically offered was time tracking, and basically Time Doctor offers, we measure 4 verticals: websites, applications, mouse movements, and keyboard movements. And from that, you're actually able to really get a great idea of how productive basically where someone is putting their time. Right. Those other platforms, which I'm not going to name, they're fantastic platforms, but they are they do not measure those extra variables. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And some of the major reasons why they don't measure those extra variables is because it's not within their particular business model to be able to measure those extra variables, because then you might become very frustrated at the
inefficiencies
of your team. 8 hours. Right. You could spend 8 hours working on something, but you only got 2 hours of real work done. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like that's an example. So for us in our company, we have 60-ish people throughout 22 countries. I don't care whether the mission statement of the company is to enable people to work wherever they want, whenever they want. So we actually don't care how long you work. We just care that you get the work done, but we're focused on how efficiently you're going to be able to get that work done. If you can get it done more efficiently, we're actually going to pay you more. That's the way our business model works. So top people in our company get paid more than I do, as an example. And some people came from almost nothing to absolutely amazing rock stars, and you just recognize that and you pay them more. But so from that, those measurements were very interesting to other companies. And so we got a few offers to partner, and then also acquisition offers from those companies. And with staff.com, we went in, we said, this was primarily my co-founder. He said, we don't really think that this gig economy is going to work out. And the gig economy is the concept that everyone now is just doing small gigs and not doing long-term work. So the 60 people that have been in our company, some of them have been with us for more than 10 years in different companies, beforehand. So me and Rob both combined our companies afterwards in terms of the head count. And so those people they work remotely, they work in a different country, they're contractors, they work their own hours, they have their own equipment, but they've been working with us for years and years and years, and they will continue to work with us for years. So that's not a gig, right? That's somebody who it's employment. Now, I mean, I don't want to define employment as a legal term. They are definitely a contractor from a legal perspective. Correct. But they are a long-term worker. Let's say that. So they're not doing a gig. And this was something that we recognized that we really liked. And it sounds to me, based off of the chats that I've had with you, Daryl, you have a lot of people in the company that are not just putting together a little project here and there for you, but you have a core team of people that work with you on a daily basis. Right.
Core team of contractors for tax purposes.
Correct. So those are not people who you would necessarily hire on two-sided marketplaces because, number one, the fees are really high. They're anywhere from 10 to 30% on average. And the employee would not be very happy with those types of percentages. So all of a sudden, I know for me, I would not want 30% of my paycheck taken away every 2 weeks. So we decided to put together a platform to basically compete against that, which was long-term remote hiring. And that company ran for about 2 years, and it actually resulted in not a massive amount of failure, but I would say now that we're looking at it, basically Staff.com now is another version of Time Doctor specifically designed for the enterprise space. So I think the majority of your listeners right now would probably want to check out, Staff.com is for the enterprise space. The majority of your listeners probably want to check out Time Doctor. It's really the SMB product. Like if you have under 100 employees, that's the product that you would want to use. Staff.com is more for enterprise companies that have like 10,000 employees and above. That's the demographic that we're now targeting them. So we recognized with Staff.com, it was a two-sided marketplace for long-term employees. The fees were ridiculously low. They were actually just a membership fee. So you basically pay, like $50, $100 a month plus $10 per employee to be able to belong to the platform. And for that price, we were going to be able to handle all your payroll, all your tracking technology, because Time Doctor would be integrated into it. And we did quite well. Within a year, we were up to about 86,000 monthly recurring revenue, MRR. I'll use a lot of that terminology throughout the rest of the chat. And then by next year, we were only about 20,000 ahead of that point. And the reason why is we didn't recognize a core fundamental problem inside of the business model, which was churn. So there was a significant amount of churn. And for anybody that's interested in SaaS, that is the most important number for any company that's doing more than 50,000 a month. By far the most important number. Like, forget about generating new customers. Forget about generating new revenue. Churn is the most important thing that you need to pay attention to. And it really is the number that tells you whether or not people like your software, right? So like if people, I would say right now, if you have a churn rate of above 5% per month in a SaaS play, you're never going to do more than $1 million a year.
Right, because you're going to be too busy trying to replace all the customers you're losing.
Correct.
Month over month.
Staff.com had a churn rate of 11%.
Whoa.
And we didn't recognize that. So that meant that our average lifetime of a customer was 8.5 months, which basically meant that we had to more than replace our entire customer base every year. So it's like, great, we built $1 million business. That's fantastic. It will never get to 10 million. It's going to require such an amount of extra capital to be able to get there, and effort, that it's just unrecognizable. And I could talk about two-sided marketplaces for a long time because I find it such an interesting subject. The only ones that are successful are two marketplaces in which you do not need, in which the person that's doing the labor, right? The employee, you're the employer, the other side of the market is the employee. If the employee changes every single transaction, you will be successful. If the employee does not change on every single transaction, it's a disaster. So I'll give you an example. Platforms like Upwork, Odesk, Elance, Freelancer, they kind of go in between because they've got a little gig economy, but then they also, most of their money comes from long-term workers. Well, long-term workers are not interested in handing over 20% of their paycheck to employers. Then you look at something like Uber, okay, and Uber is ridiculously successful. I never use the same Uber driver twice. I'm never like, oh, I need Daryl. I need my Daryl driver. Why isn't he around? Because I am interested in the transaction of just being able to get from A to B. There's no loyalty built into that system. So that's why anybody who's starting a two-sided marketplace, if I see that it's a recurring customer that comes back, time and time again, I don't invest. And the reason being is because it's too hard of a nut to crack. A company that had just closed its doors, and it was massive, was I can't remember the name of it right now, but it's a Y Combinator company. That it was a company that came in and cleaned your house.
Oh,
So
like
it was
Molly Maid
basically,
or something like that.
it was like Molly Maid, but it was virtual, right? So you
Okay.
just had a very simple sign up page, and then someone would come and clean your house. Well, they did very well. They raised a lot of money. I think they raised like $100 million or something like that. And they were up to, a big clip, and then they had to completely shut their doors. And one of the main reasons is poaching, is churn. Why should I pay this company 25%, as an example, of this transaction when this woman or man has already cleaned up my house 8 times?
Right,
Why don't
right, right, right.
I say, oh, well, why don't you just come here and clean up my house every week? And I'll pay you more than the other guy is paying. So that's why we basically recognized it cost a lot of money to recognize that was
Right.
a big lesson that we learned. So you can have the best perception, and I think a lot of this connects to FOMO in Silicon Valley, fear of missing out, which is everyone kind of jumps on the train of revenue and does not look at profitability. So these companies can become they can generate a lot of revenue very quickly, but they're very hard to get profitable. And I think that's the problem that we're seeing right now, is the lack of scale. Because you can scale, but you scale at a loss, and we're not in the business of scaling at loss. We wanted to scale and make profit, so we got out of there pretty quick. But I see other companies. There's a good friend of mine right now that's just about to close his doors, and he raised $15 million
Okay.
for a marketplace play, and it's not going to be working out for him. So they are happening left, right, and center.
So that's yeah. And again, it's kind of like a lot of people, I think, like you're saying, they're trying to go too big too fast, and like you said, they're not focused on the long-term play of profitability. So now a couple of questions that come up with this. First of all, I think there's a great lesson in that, and I really hope the listeners were thinking of that because I know a lot of people, they complain they want a bigger business, so they want to hit the 7-figure mark really fast, but it's the name of the game, it's not how much you make, it's how much you keep, right? And I think a lot of people forget that, because they like, sure, you've got $1 million in transactions, you're touching $1 million, but I know guys like you just mentioned, I mean, that are doing $1 million plus, but they're going home broke. You know what I mean? At the end of the day.
Yep.
So a couple of questions that came out of that. One, I'm sure some people were like, "Wait, they raised $100 million. They raised." First of all, can you speak to raising money just briefly? Because I know you do it. I don't know. Stephanie's just yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So raising money is pretty sticky. I personally would try to stay away from it if at all possible. But basically, raising money is you talk to a whole bunch of people called venture capitalists, and venture capitalists are people that have a lot of money, come from people called LPs, which are limited partners. So let's just call them really rich people that have $20 million. And so 5 guys with $20 million, they all get together and they say, hey, you know what? Let's put $100 million into a fund, and then let's invest in primarily tech companies, but it can be any type of company, to be able to get to be able to invest in these companies and then own part of that business. So unlike a bank where you go and take a loan, venture capitalists will actually buy a piece of your company. And so it happens in various rounds. There's a seed round, which is usually about 10%. And then there's A, B, C, D, E, F, G rounds. If you're in your G, you're in trouble. But they usually take about a third of the equity on the table. So, and that can vary. That's not a rule, a hard and fast rule, but that's generally how it works. So you go out, you talk to these guys, and you show them their business, you show them your business model, you show them their metrics, and then they will invest in you. And it's very exciting. If you want to grow a really big company, you just mentioned Shopify. Shopify is an example of somebody who raised venture capital money and begrudgingly. I know that Toby was against raising money at the beginning, but it worked out beautifully for them. I think they're at like I think they're doing $250 million right now, and they'll probably be doing $500 million by next year.
That's awesome.
So they're doing very, very well. And I know of other companies that have raised a bunch of money, and they'll absolutely fall flat on their face. And probably they would have fallen flat on their face had they raised money or not. And then there's the third category, which is actually the worst category. And I think that this isn't spoken a lot about, and it's really important for entrepreneurs to understand this. I'm talking about companies that are growing, let's say, between 25 and 75% per year, and they've got, let's say, $5 million in the bank, and they're growing between 25 and 75% per year. They're doing $5 million in revenue. These guys are right on the cusp of venture capital, and there are a lot of venture capital companies that will come in and will try to give you money, and you need to fight that desire constantly. The reason being is it is not a good economic decision for the founders of the company to take that equity off the table, because if they do, they will not see that money returned to them. The only reason why you should raise venture capital is because it is going to 10x your business. So if you put $5 million into the business, most VCs will tell you this. Let's say I'm going to do a Series A of $5 million, and let's say I'm doing $2 million a year. Your goal within 18 months should be to be at $10 million. And if you're not at $10 million, you will not get a Series B. You'll be like what they call a zombie company, because you won't have the capital to be able to keep going. Or maybe even worse, you will have the capital to keep going, and no one will buy you. So you'll just kind of like very sheepishly roll along. But half of the money or half of the equity in the company is now off the table. And you can't actually, when you sell the company, you will not make the returns that you wanted.
Right.
It's really, like, I see this happening. I have a friend of mine that sold his company for $55 million. He's the CEO of the company. And after taxes and everything else, he made about $500,000.
Wow.
So, like, he was making more as the CEO of the company
than he did selling it.
He did as the buyout.
Wow.
Because he doesn't own equity, right? Like, that's
hurts.
something you just really need to pay attention to it. And he told me, he said, like, I could have done it on my own, and yeah, I wouldn't have sold for 55 million, but I would have definitely sold for 20, and I would have taken all of that 20.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Think about that, right? Like, it's actually, and that's 10 years of his life that he invested into it. So important for entrepreneurs to pay attention to that. Venture capital is something that sounds very exciting, but in reality could be a huge disaster if you do not, maybe a disaster is a strong word, but your ability, you have to see what's founder friendly, what's company friendly, and then what's good for the employees. So those are the three major sort of pillars that I always look at. What's good for me and Rob, my co-founder, what's good for the company, and then what's good for the employees inside of it. And if I don't win on two of those three pillars, I usually don't do it.
I think there's a ton of insight on this, and what I love so much about the message, Liam, is we're talking about long-term here, because, none of this stuff is get rich quick. None of my listeners are, hopefully in the business of just trying to make a, 50 to 100 grand and disappear. Like there's no real wealth in that. You're trying to build something that will last and a legacy. And so focusing on profitability, not just growth, focusing on holding your equity, because like your friend said, might not have sold for 55, but it was sold for 20 and he would have been able to keep it. I think that there's just lessons, because it's really sexy right now. You got Shark Tank and Dragon's Den, and oh my God, I went and I got a deal and I got it like $1 billion, and but you don't realize that it's almost, it's a catch-22 where like you're almost signing your life away. And someone's like your friend, he worked for 10 years to build a company and then basically sold his job. And where the whole point of being an entrepreneur is like where a lot of people retire and then that's it, like they just stop getting that monthly check. As an entrepreneur, the idea is you're building an asset, so when you sell it to retire, you get like this big lump sum. You can then play around with other projects. So to invest 10 years of his life and build something that was successful and then get $500,000, like it's just like it's very frustrating. So Yeah, very powerful lessons. People may want to go back and re-listen to that to make sure it really sinks in. Now, Liam, I know we don't have you for hours and hours and hours. One thing I do want to talk about, because obviously it's the name of your game, it's the business you're in, building, managing, and monitoring and enriching a team. Well, how can you speak to that? What are some of the biggest challenges you see with your clients that have? I mean, having worked with Time Doctor and all these things, can you help set the listeners' kind of expectations around team performance and give them some tips and strategies for building an effective team?
Sure. So I would say the most important lesson that I've learned from our clients, and it's quite interesting for us because we don't discuss how big any of our clients are, and we don't even discuss who our clients are if we have not had permission to, we haven't gotten a case study from them or something like that.
Correct.
But we've been able to see the growth of various companies because we see their direct headcount. And I can see that there are some barriers to entry. So like as an example, usually 5 employees is a really interesting sort of barrier in terms of before someone goes to the next step. Then there's 10, then there's 50, then there's 100, and then there's usually 250. And past 250, they've kind of figured everything out. And I can see companies go from 250 to like 10,000. And the thing that they're figuring out throughout that entire process, throughout that entire process from employee 1 to employee 250, is process design. So you need operational procedures in place to be able to run the business. And it's really boring. No one wants to do it. It sounds like, it sounds like doing accounting and profit and loss statements and all this kind of stuff. It's really boring stuff. I've got actually, right after this, I've got to take photos of about 400 different receipts that I've been keeping for the quarter for the business that I've got. Like that, it's just stuff that you don't want to do.
Right.
But it's so important to do because if you don't have that in place, you will not be able to scale past that particular point. I call it the sacred knowledge problem. So if there is any single person in the company that has sacred knowledge, meaning that person has it and no one else does, it's a ticking time bomb. Because what if that person quits? What if that person, you fire them for some weird reason? Let's say they get hit by a bus. Let's say Rob, and as an example, something happens to him and he ends up, in a coma for 3 months. Well, how are we supposed to operate the business if he's the only one that has access to the payroll data, as an example, right? What are the procedures around it? How do you access bank accounts, all this kind of stuff. So all of that stuff has to be documented. And for remote teams, it's actually, so remote teams have an advantage. You have a remote employee, you actually have a big advantage in the space, which is brick and mortar companies don't have to do this for a very long time. But remote employees have to do it right away because John is not right next to me. My new employee, John, is not right next to me. So when John does something wrong, I just tell him, hey, this is how you do it right. John is 10,000 miles away. So you need to document everything. You need to digitize everything. It needs to be in a transferable format. We have a wiki, as an example, at timedoctorandstaff.com that we use to be able to document all of our procedures. We've got hundreds of them in there. So, and actually in ours, we have a wiki that evolves organically because if you, for your listeners that don't know, a wiki, it's like Wikipedia is the perfect example of that. But wikis are basically sort of online frameworks where you can get an original document and then you can go in and you can change that document over time. And dependent upon how many people agree with those changes, that then becomes the gold version of that particular document. So like go and check out Donald Trump's Wikipedia page. And I bet you there's a huge debate going on the back end of people that are saying, oh, that isn't true, that is true. And there's this voting process. It's very democratic in the way that it works. So in our company, we have that same system in place. And about 2 years ago, when there was a major update, the Panda update for search engine optimization, what I had done is I said, I'm going to give out commission. Basically, I'm going to give out bounties for people that can update the documents. So you update the document and people agree that that is the new procedure that we should go with, then you'll get $50 here, $50 there, that kind of thing. So I was able to update all of our documentation for probably about $1,000, $1,500.
That's awesome.
Where we wouldn't have been able, so basically the documents are organic. They evolve with the team. And they all evolve with changes, the changes within the business model. So if you're smaller and you don't want to set up your own wiki, Google Docs are fantastic. Set up a folder system, set up Google Docs, it's free, and you can just literally have procedures. For me, my personal perspective with regards to creating these documents is they shouldn't be longer than a page. If they're longer than a page, then they need to be 2 processes, right? They need two sort of orders. Our mission, another sort of things that we have in the company, at least that I started, is a quote by Napoleon. And Napoleon said, orders shouldn't be easy to understand. They should be impossible to misunderstand. And it's a very small change, but once you have that mindset, it completely changes the way that you build out processes within the business. So as an example, I have clients that will say, I went out and told my employee to do X, Y, Z, and I told my employee to install WordPress on this website, and I gave him the email, the password to be able to access our server, and and he comes back and he says, what's WordPress?
Right.
Because you didn't actually make the orders impossible to misunderstand. You made them easy to understand, and those are planets apart. So you need to be able to have a one-pager, very clear. Hyperlinks are fantastic. I use hyperlinks everywhere. So as an example, I would have hyperlinked WordPress, and I would have hyperlinked it to the Wikipedia page, as an example, just to sort of say, what is this thing? Okay, let me click on it and find out what the heck it is.
Right.
So it's a one-page document, usually 4 to 5 steps. And it's a one page, and then also too, I provide a video walkthrough. So you can do this I use an application called Jing that provides like little 5-minute videos, screen grab videos.
Yep.
You can also just upload them directly to YouTube if you have screen grab software. Usually costs about $100 for the screen grab software. So you can do any of those types of things. They're very easy to be able to implement, to be able to get your team up and running. And you need to then take those processes, bring them to the team. And if you're dealing with Southeast Asian labor, as an example, there's also a cultural bias connected to it where they will not tell you what's wrong. So you need to really train them differently. So I have tell me 3 things you don't like about X, right? I just had a meeting, actually, we're just hiring a new sales manager inside of the company. And I had to sit down with the entire sales staff that interviewed this sales manager. So I interviewed her, but then I also had my sales staff interview her. And I asked the same question to each one, which was, tell me 3 things you don't like about this person, and tell me three reasons why this person will fail at this position.
Right.
And that is really useful for me, because then I really get a clear idea of what the heck is going on and what they like and what they don't like.
Right.
They won't tell you that stuff.
No, they want to be yes men, and they want to tell you the things they think you want to hear, but they misunderstand. As the owner, we're not going to go cry in a corner about this stuff. We just just forget the labor pains. Just give us the baby,
Exactly. That's it. You need to be able to provide all that document, and you need to have that on documentation. So if someone doesn't understand a document, then you can't make it gold. The document can't go gold. It's got to stay in beta, and you've got to keep iterating on it until you've got it perfect, until it is no longer easy to understand. It's impossible to misunderstand. So that is, that's the process that I would have people start on. And it's a huge process. People are probably listening right now thinking, oh yeah, Liam, I don't have 70,000 hours to be able to work out all the processes of what I do in the business. And that's the wrong way to approach it. What you should do is take, let's say, your Thursday afternoons and work out what are the next big things that you need to do to be able to make the company more efficient. So what things do you do, or do people do in your company that just take a lot of time to do? So like I'll focus on SEO because it's actually something I've been working on just recently, is the process to go out and get backlinks, is the outreach process. So we have we have about 2 or 3 pieces of software that do that. And about 2 weeks ago, I built all the processes to be able to put those up on our wiki, and now we have those processes up there. So I could take you, Daryl, and I could sit you down, and probably within an afternoon, you could be trained on it and working. Whereas if I didn't have those processes, it would take me 2 to 3 weeks to be able to do it.
Yeah, and then your business can be taken hostage by key employees who have all this sacred knowledge and either won't relinquish it or, just for whatever reasons. I actually have a client that's been an ongoing problem, that there's a key employee and it's a mystery. How many people are on their team and what do they do? So, it's not a problem anymore. We've worked on it over a couple of months and we actually have a lot of documentation. But when you talk about the sacred knowledge problem, it's real. Michael Gerber says that in the E-Myth. If your business is dependent on special people, it won't be able to scale and grow. If your business is dependent on amazing people, you can't find amazing people everywhere. McDonald's grew an amazing business because they took what amazing people did and they made it so anybody could do it. And that's through operational procedures or SOPs. So that's awesome. Right. That's huge. Yeah. Leah, again, people listening to this, please, you better be taking down pages of notes and getting ready to write Liam some thank you cards. Because, all a company is a collection of people working together to achieve a common goal, usually delivering a product or service to another group of people. And so it's all people-based. It's all oriented. And in this single call, we've talked about not only tools to help achieve like super crystal clear accountability of who is doing what and what are you paying people to do, which your employees might hate in the beginning, but the real performers are going to love it because it's going to get them recognition for how awesome they are. And then beyond that, how to build the operating procedures, how to structure it to go from 1 employee to 250 plus. Yeah. What about well, no, I guess you already talked about it. I loved even just the 3 things you dislike and 3 reasons why they'll fail. I love that because it just cuts through the meeting. It just cuts, it's Occam's razor. What do I need to know to look out for this person? And what's the lesser of all these evils? Because with anybody, there's going to be a pro and a con. Everybody, right? No one's going to be perfect ever. So better know that up front. Yeah. Very, very awesome. Yeah. What do you think has been one of the biggest challenges for you in your business career overall?
Oh boy, I know my biggest challenge right now is to find people that are really good. And well, that's a cop out. Really good is a horrible term to use. I need to find people that are experts at things that can take us to the next level. So. We're hiring another sales manager right now, and these people, this person should be able to sell circles around me. Right. And it's that is something that a lot of people will find uncomfortable. Yep. Especially hiring, the last person that we hired, this last sales manager that we hired, he was 60. And I'm 30 and I'm 34. Hiring somebody like that is an interesting exchange because he could definitely be my father, and that's been interesting. Trying to find top performers is really interesting. I'm very interested in how HR works at this point, like recruitment. It is by far the most important thing to be able to get us to the next level. It's literally just the engine of hiring different employees. We have 60 employees and we have 2 co-founders. My co-founder is the CEO, Rob. I'm the CMO. We now, if I doubled the amount of hours that I was working, right? If I switch from 8 hours a day to 16 hours a day, I might increase the business's profits by 5-10% at max.
Right.
There's very little that I can do now to be able to move it forward outside of leadership. So that's what I have to focus on now. And there is I just don't, the skill sets that I originally built the business on, which was going out, working on a particular problem, writing a blog post, getting it posted, getting people to link to it, all that kind of stuff. It has to be built through people. It can't be built through one individual.
Right.
So that's probably the biggest thing right now, is trying to find those people and trying to make them successful. The second thing would probably be, and it's probably a close second, is really looking at data and understanding how data is going to inform the future of the business. If you can't project your next, I would say, 3 quarters, then you don't have a business. You have a business, but you have no idea what's going to happen next. Like, I know very clearly within about 3 to 4 percentage points what quarter 2 is going to look like, what my next quarter is going to look like. So that gives me a good perspective of where I'm currently at. And it also shows me, hey, we're not doing what we need to do right now. Like, we're not hitting the goals that we should be hitting. What the hell is going on? How can we solve this? And how can we work on it? It's not just something that will take a week to solve. It will take 3 to 4 months to actually solve for the next quarter. So it's one of those things that things aren't moving as quickly as they were in the earlier days of the business. And that is frustrating, but also required, and also kind of exciting too, because we're dealing with bigger problems where, like, you talked about the AI thing. We just made a major investment into that. And it's so cool to just do stuff that no one has done before. That's really cool and empowering, but at the same time, I'm not the one that is actually doing it. And a part of that makes me a little sad.
Right. Yeah, fair enough. But it's, again, you're still a part of it and you're enabling it. And so I get what you mean by it's just cool and exciting and empowering. And that's kind of it now. I guess you've moved, and this is also almost like an evolution. Like, you've moved from getting the results yourself through getting the results through others, which allows you to have much greater impact on the world. I mean, that's partially why, at least for me, why I enjoy this podcast. I realized with my own business, and maybe I'm on a similar path, different but similar in the sense of with my own business, I realized I needed a few hundred customers to be able to stay afloat. And I was getting all these testimonials back, and it was really empowering for me to get that. But I realized by helping other business owners, I could effectively have an exponential impact, because each business owner would need a few hundred to a few thousand customers for them to stay afloat. And so it's almost like that, trying to accomplish your goals through others. And that's kind of what I'm hearing you say now. Like, it's slower to encourage change because you've got like a big ship and you've got people to mobilize and you've got pushback and opinions and, and just cultural hurdles to overcome, right? So that's, like you said, it's like 3 to 4 months to make a change, but it's a much more lasting and enduring and longer term change or result because of your enabling through other people. So I really, I can at least speak to that. I'm in a different world. I'm envious. I want a software product because the scale and the longevity of it.
I can speak to that for a second, because I think that's another thing that a lot of your readers would probably love.
Sure.
Is SaaS is the best business model on the face of the planet. It is like, and what I mean by that is software as a service. So it means making software that you don't sell completely to a customer. So I don't sell, like, a video game is not SaaS. You sell the video game for $80 and that's it. Software as a service is, software as a service is World of Warcraft. Mm-hmm. Okay. Perfect. Your readers probably know what World of Warcraft is, which is an online world where you pay, I don't know what it is, $10 or $15 a month. Look at World of Warcraft's numbers. They blow any individual video game out of the water. Yeah. They are infinitely more successful. And the reason being is because they're saying, listen, we're going to have an active dev team that's going to continually work on this world and work on this game and everything. And you're continuously going to get cool and awesome stuff every single month. And not only that, you don't have to pay us all up front. You just have to pay us in installments. Little tiny installments, but the installments never end because we're continuously updating the product for you. Right. It is awesome. It's like you can set your watch to it. It's
right. Well, it's recurring revenue. Model. It's a subscription model, which is so powerful. Absolutely. So powerful.
Yeah, you shut down, like, if we shut down business today, meaning we no longer accepted any new customers, it would take probably almost a decade before, the customers would stop using the software. Maybe that's a little bit of an overestimation, but definitely 5 years, because the technology stack might update and things might change. But it's just one of those things that, like, for anybody that's interested in getting into that kind of stuff, and if you have any type of development background whatsoever, I think that SaaS is really, and it's really come into its own recently. We've seen it kind of be on the outer edges of like what a software company does, how it, it hasn't been the big, the big thing. And because companies like Oracle and Cisco and Nortel and all these huge multi-billion-dollar megacorps didn't do business that way because their business model didn't work in that method. But now SaaS is very quickly taking over that particular business model. Basically the business model of selling software on a massive scale. And it's cheaper for the customer. It's better for the customer. And for me, like, to be able to run the business that we are running now through a non-SaaS model, it would have cost us $10 million to start, and the Time Doctors cost us probably $100,000 to start in terms of investment capital. So it's a complete, like, you can now get in for such a smaller amount of money than you could before. So it's just so exciting what's happening, because like you're seeing all these small companies that are building 10, 100 million, billion-dollar businesses. When we had chatted, Daryl, back in Canada, when you came up, there were, at that event, we just did a survey actually, because I got back from another Fresh Founders meeting, and out of 100 members, 25% do more than $10 million a year.
Which is
and
awesome.
They're all doing that, right?
Which
it's
is
like,
awesome.
that's amazing. That's amazing. And it's just like, and it's like little teams. It's teams of 30 to 40 people that have a $10 million, 20, 30, $40 million business. So that's so exciting. And I know that it's, if you haven't built a SaaS company right now, it's probably a far way off. But the other thing is SaaS works on compound interest. Same concept as compound interest. I don't know why they don't teach compound interest in school. They should. Every year, like, let's say you do $100,000 on year one in your SaaS business. Year two, you're going to do 250,000. Year three, you're going to do 500,000. Year four, you're going to do $1 million. And by year five, you're doing 2-3 million, and it just keeps leveling like that. So yeah, it takes a long time to work on, but in 5 years, you could easily have a $10 million a year business, as opposed to doing consulting or, individual transactional work where it's a lot less scalable. Right, you constantly have to fight for that new business to come in the door, and you have to provide labor. I work very hard, but I could probably not work in the company at all and hire someone out to do this job, and we'd probably be okay in terms of the growth rate, because of just the way that the engine has worked. Right, the engine is starting now, and now, since we have cash to be able to solve problems, which is, coming from a bootstrapped entrepreneurial background, it's amazing. You can just like solve a problem with like money, as opposed to solving it with like
sweat equity, and crying at night.
Tears, just run everything on tears. It's so empowering to be able to do that, but more importantly, it's just we can make a lot more mistakes now than we could. So I think it's so important to be able to hit that with, a lot of your listeners, because if you've thought about ever doing something like that, like if you've never done it before, I would highly suggest you just start working for a SaaS company. Just find out, can I do customer support? Yes. Boom, get in, try it, see what's going on, and then go to something like, there's a whole bunch of these 72-hour, like build a startup in 72-hour camps. The biggest one is Startup Weekend, and there's startup weekends in almost every major city. You just get together, and it's usually one hacker, one designer, and one business guy, and they get together over a weekend and they build an MVP of a startup. Those are awesome. Go and take those. Go for 5, right? Like, get that feeling out, and then you're just, after that, something will come out. Just basically find a need and try to fill it.
Yeah, that's very powerful. So to wrap this up, what do you feel are some of the habits that have really helped you on your path to success?
Discipline in terms of putting the work in every single day. I'm on minute 59 of podcast with Daryl. I know that because I'm measuring all of my data on Time Doctor, obvious. And, and during this call, I spent about a third of my time on Gmail, a third of my time on Skype, and a third of my time on Chart Mobile. So I know all of the, like, I know what happened during this call. I also know how distracted I was throughout this call and what I was currently doing. So that's really important, is figuring out, okay, if you've decided to be able to build a business, let's say you have a day job or something like that, go home. Time Doctor, it's $5 to use it for yourself. It's dirt cheap if you're going to use it to measure your own productivity. Go home at 6 p.m., go from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. and don't watch TV, and do that for a year. You'll make money, guaranteed. Yep. Just go home and do that. And once you're generating $5,000 a month doing that, then quit your job, and then do it, and then that'll be your job, right? It's like, it's very simple, but it's very simple to say, but it's so hard for people to do because they don't require they don't have the discipline to be able to execute on that particular strategy.
Right.
So that's probably the biggest thing, is discipline with regards to doing the job.
Right. And doing
secondarily, the work. Doing the work. And then secondarily to that is, I think, for me personally, innovation has been one of the biggest needs for me, or biggest advantages for me, but that is because of my personality type. I know what I'm good at and I know what I'm not good at. So, like you had mentioned that you're using Trello, right, to integrate into Time Doctor. The whole platform, the whole concept of integrating project management systems into Time Doctor, and bringing those systems into Time Doctor, that's one of those things that I came up with when we were just talking about, okay, well, like, task management, how does it work? Do we want to compete against them? Do we not want to compete against them? Let's get my head into, like, every single one of those integrations. We have 30 plus. I've spent weeks, studying it, interacting with it, trying to figure out what that customer is in that particular integration. All those things are really important. So for me, it was studying my environment and then being able to innovate on that particular market. So there's a fantastic book that everyone should read if you're thinking about getting into this stuff, which is called it's a book by Peter Thiel. And Peter Thiel built PayPal, and he also built actually one of the first artificial intelligences for the CIA, and he made crap loads of money off of it. It is called 0 to 1. So the book talks about Peter Thiel's investment philosophy and his tech start, and when he builds a company, what his philosophy is on building a company. So he looks for monopolies. That's all he looks for. So he says, I want to go into an industry that I'll make $1 billion at, and I can lock up the entire industry so that no one else can come in. And I don't want any competitors in there before I get in. That's the best type of industry to enter. The second best industry that you can enter is an industry in which there are competitors, but your solution is either exponentially cheaper or exponentially better than all of the competitors. So I had a discussion with the founder of Freshdesk, which is one of our integration partners. And Freshdesk does ticketing software. Okay, we use Freshdesk in our business. We love it. And we had moved from Zendesk, which is the other major competitor in the space. And basically, we said we moved from Zendesk to Freshdesk because you guys provided all the capability that we had on on Zendesk, but you guys were willing to move all of our data over, and it was going to cost us half the amount. So that's why we moved. And I said it wasn't because your app was any better. Right. And he kind of got pretty defensive, and he said, well, what do you mean the app isn't better? We have this feature, we have that feature, all this kind of stuff. And then I said, what would be better is if you had an artificial intelligence that was just able to answer all of the tickets as good as a human being, so that we wouldn't have to have 12 customer service reps in Time Doctor.
That would be exponentially better.
That's exponentially better, right? So that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about exponentially better. Don't just add an extra, thing to this app that there are already 10 other versions of it that exist. Yep. You won't lose, but you certainly won't win. And what I mean by winning is you're going to build a company that, does $100 million a year, as an example, and more importantly, doesn't have any competitors. Google owns 85% of all search traffic on the internet. They have a monopoly over that entire group. Now, and AdWords does $40 billion a year, right? Their AdSense, their AdWords engine,
Yep.
$40 billion a year.
Yep.
Every other program inside of Google, they take a loss on,
Yep.
except for that.
Yep.
So because they have a monopoly, no one is going to beat them. Everyone has tried, no one can beat them. So as long as you have that, you're immortal. And so that's what I would, take a look at that book if you're interested in getting into like large scale tech plays. It's probably been the best read in the last year for me by far. So discipline, innovation, and that's pretty much about it. It's just like being in it really, and I guess passion for what you're doing. If you don't really like what you're doing, don't do it.
Love that. Great words. Actually, I just bought the book. It's on its way for me to pick up and read when I get back to Canada. For all the listeners here, I really think that there's value in, even just at the $5 a month. Liam, you're my friend, so I'm just going to plug it anyways. Like just to analyze, do you really work the hours that you think you will work? We're not productive. We're not robots. We're not productive all day long. I think it would be very insightful to be able to just sign up and just watch yourself and just, Liam, what happens to the data? You counting my hours on Pornhub or something or what? Like what's
No, it's actually encrypted on your end, so you're fine on that side.
Right. So just get on the dock, people. Yeah. Okay. So just get on the dock, and for your own private knowledge, just honestly take a real assessment of yourself. Time management is one of the most critical skills that separates people who are successful from unsuccessful. When you see, there's something we always said, I've trained with world champions and Olympic champions. We always say, like, when somebody wins, it's not because they're better, it's because they've optimized their time in their life, and they were already world champion. They were already the gold medalist. It just took that event for the world to find out. And so where you are right now is a good demonstration of where you will be in 4 or 5 years from now if you just take an inventory of how you spend your time and be real with yourself. So anyways, I just encourage everyone to maybe check out Time Doctor, as well as this book that you mentioned, 0 to 1.
0 to 1.
Yeah.
By Peter Thiel.
And again, if you have an enterprise solution, I highly recommend you check out staff.com. There's some cool AI things coming down the pipeline. And of course, Liam's pretty awesome himself. Liam, is there anything I didn't ask you that I should have asked you? You've been so forthcoming and just extremely helpful in this call.
What is the funnest thing to do in the Philippines?
Okay,
so what's the
funnest thing to do in the Philippines?
Go and download an app called Grab Helicopter and go take a helicopter ride. It's $80 to take a helicopter anywhere in Manila. It's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, all right. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that right now, actually. So, awesome.
Right, very cool.
Liam, thank you so much for your time, my friend. Again, I know you have a team of people and 101 other things you could be doing. I definitely think this call is going to change lives. So just thank you for sharing your time with me. Thank you for being a friend. And thank you for creating these cool tools because I know I'm going to benefit from them.
Great. Thanks a lot.
You've reached the end of our interview. Now, first, let me thank you for listening. I appreciate and respect you more than you'll ever know. And now I'd like to ask you a couple of questions. First, what 3 lessons did you just learn? What 3 aha moments just jumped out at you? Second, what can you implement for yourself and your business in the next 24 hours? Third, what can you give to someone else to help you with, or give to them to just do it for you? Whatever it is, remember, taking action is the secret sauce to results. Now, if you think this interview would be helpful for a friend, please give them a link to it. It'll help them and it'll help me too. I'd also like to invite you to help me find out more about the challenges you're facing, your dreams, your goals, and how I can help you overcome what's holding you back. We both do better when we know better, and your success is my success. So please reach out and interact. You can visit our website, bestbusinesscoach.ca for Canada or California, where I'm from and where I'm living. You're welcome to also try out one of our paid programs. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, and pretty much every other social media channel you can think of. You should also subscribe to the podcast, and if you're enjoying them, please leave us a nice review. It really helps. That's all for now. Once again, thank you. Take care of yourself, and remember, the world needs the best business you can build. And I believe in you.